for being patient with some technical difficulties, but we're here now, and this is the perfect time to get started and the perfect group to get here. I believe that each of you are supposed to be here, so thank you for being obedient and for being here tonight. So thank you. My name is Kailei Carr, for those of you who don't know me, and I'm the host of the Beyond the Business Suit podcast, which we are recording live tonight here at the Gathering Spot, in Atlanta, Georgia, and this will be broadcast on our podcast, Beyond the Business Suit, and so it will likely go live next week or the week after, so make sure that you find your podcasting place of choice and subscribe to Beyond the Business Suit. Would love to have you on there, and you'll be able to hear this once it publishes. So before we get started, and this panel, look at that, they're fabulous on there. Yes! I'm excited for you to learn more about them and to hear about what we're going to talk about today. So, as you know, our theme for today is how to live your best life in 2019, and we are going to get to that. Before we do, I wanted to give you a little bit about myself and the work that I do. As I mentioned, I am the host of the podcast Beyond the Business Suit. I'm also the CEO of the Asbury Group, which is a company we work with women leaders to help them transform from the inside out. We help them show up as their best selves online and in the office. That's what I say. I make you look good both online and in the office, but we work with them to do overall leadership development, personal branding, and leadership development and leadership presence coaching. So really excited to have you here. Where you are sitting, you should see one of these bookmarks. And these bookmarks have a URL on the back for the Beyond the Business Suit retreat, beyondthebusinesssuit.com/retreat. So in March, we are hosting our first women's leadership retreat, and the theme is Pause, Recharge, and Level Up. Yes, are you ready to pause, recharge, and level up? Are you ready? And this is a women's leadership retreat, and the reason why that I even came up with this idea in the first place is because I had been talking to too many women who were doing too much. They were being super women, as we do, many of us women. I know we have some men in the audience as well, but y'all know how many of us women, especially women of color, take on a lot. We are playing many roles, wearing many hats. And as a result, sometimes we don't do a great job in pouring to ourselves the way we pour into everyone else. And it was almost feeling like an epidemic. It was like people were getting frazzled and dazzled and having physical and emotional and professional implications for not taking care of themselves. So in this 2-day retreat, which is taking place right outside of Atlanta in Peachtree City, we're going to pause, we are going to recharge, and we will level up the skills. I believe that professional development and leadership development is an inside job, and I can make somebody show up as their best, I can make them look the part, I can give them all the right skills, but if they don't know how to take care of themselves, if they're not in the right mindset, if they don't know how to if they don't understand who they are at their core and have an awareness of what their gifts are, then there's only so far I can take them. So we're going to go through a journey in March to get them there. So I am offering the Gathering Spot folks here tonight a $200 discount on registration, and you can find that by going to beyondthebusinesssuit.com/retreat and registering there and using the code TGS, which is on this bookmark. Now, why did I give you a bookmark? I am a reader. I don't read as much as I used to because I have a 2-year-old, let me be real, but I believe that when there have been, well, not even I believe, I've experienced many times when I've read books that have really touched me and changed me. So I've made a list of 19 of the books that will help you get in the right mindset for 2019. Some of my favorite books, some of the books that really have touched me or have touched clients of mine, and you can find that by going to KaileiCarr.com/TGS2019. And I have a lot of vowels in my name, so Kailei Carr, like, how do you spell that? But on the back here, you see my Instagram handle, and you can spell it from there. So that is my gift for you, or to you, from being here tonight. I also wanted to thank the Gathering Spot for hosting us tonight. They've been so gracious in having us here, and really excited to pour into you. Now, how I got started into doing this work, just briefly, I spent over 15 years in corporate America, climbing that corporate ladder, doing my thing, continuing to get promotion upon promotion. And in 2013, I had a moment where a lot of life events came together. I was leading a department, I had people all over the country that I was leading. My mom, unfortunately, was going through a health journey. She was battling cancer. I was getting married. My now husband and I were planning our wedding. And I got to the point where I just was mentally checked out of work. And my company asked me to move. And I said, you know what? I'm not interested in moving right now. They said, we'll wait until your mom gets better. And I said, no, I think this is my time to leave. And on a Friday, August 2nd, that was my last day working in corporate America. On Monday, August 5th, my mom passed away. On Wednesday, August 7th, my husband left his job. Now, he had been planning to leave his job. And altogether, I had many things that caused me to take a pause, to think about, okay, what do I want to do in this next season? How do I want to give back? Do I want to go back to another corporate job, which I could have. I did pretty well, but I realized that there were so many things that helped and hindered women from advancing, especially women of color, that were not talked about in performance reviews, they were not talked about in the classroom, and there were things that came typically pretty easy to me, or I had the right people around me. So I wanted to create this organization to help women do that, and it's been a wonderful journey. Through that journey, I've met many women who are fantastic, who are great coaches and speakers. These three women are some of those, and when I tell you we have the best of the best, we really do have the best of the best here. I've come across many coaches, many speakers, many facilitators, people who work with people to transform them. And these three women just so happened to be in Atlanta, so when we decided on this topic, I said, I know exactly who I want, and they all said yes. So thank you, ladies, for saying yes. Thank you. Yes. So today we're going to be talking about how to live your best life in 2019. And we've all heard it. There's a song about it. There's that hashtag that many of us have used. Yes, living my best life. But what does that mean? And it's so easy to get into the, okay, everybody wants to live their best life, all that. And it becomes a little trite. But today we don't want to have an average conversation. We don't want to have a conversation that you will hear from everyone else. We want you to leave different. We want you to leave with some tools to help you change. We want you to leave really in a mindset and in a place where you have some context on how you can live your best life this year. And let me tell you, you'll learn. You're hearing me right now, but you'll learn once you hear about these women, how you can do that and why these are the right people to help us. So without further ado, I want to introduce my wonderful panelists. And I'm going to have them introduce themselves. But before they introduce themselves, I'm not going to give you their bio. I'm going to tell you how I know them and why I selected them. So first, let's start with Marla Teyolia. Hello.
Hello.
I met Marla through a mutual friend of mine from college, Toria Frederick. I know some of you ladies here know her. And from the moment I met Marla, I knew, okay, I know why she connected us. She is, well, I'll let her tell you all the hats that she wears. But what I love about her is that she is an unapologetically relentless advocate for women of color. And she is focused on making sure that we are whole. And I'm just going to stop there and let you bring us into this room.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Kailei, and the Gathering Spot, and Monica and Ekene for being here with me. Before we start, I'm sorry, my eye is really watering for some reason. But before we start, I wanted to bring us in really mindfully. So I'm going to encourage everybody right now to put your phone down, Put your bags to the side, right? If your legs are crossed, uncross them. Plant your feet solidly on the earth. Right? And just connect with your breath. You can close your eyes, feel comfortable, or just lower your gaze, but have your gaze really be within. And just notice your breath. Feel your body supported by the chair. Feel your back rest against the back of the chair. Allowing yourself to surrender. And just breathe. I invite you to bring your left hand to your lower abdomen, your thumb touching your belly button. And with each inhalation, see if you can breathe deeply into that left hand. Feel it rise, and then feel it fall with the exhalation. And do this all at your own rhythm. Inhaling and exhaling. And continue this process of inhalation and exhalation for 1 minute. We're just going to sit here in silence, allowing your mind and your body to land, to release anything that stops you from being fully present to yourself right now. And then exhale through our mouth. 2 more times. One last time. When you're ready, you can gently open your eyes. So welcome. Yeah. Y'all are like glowing, right? So at this point, you want me to introduce myself a bit? Okay.
Yes.
So my name is Marla Teyolia. I am the CEO and founder of an organization called Culture Shift Agency. We are a holistic leadership development company for women of color. We work individually, one-on-one with women, with groups, and with organizations, really to enhance the capacity of women of color to lead. And especially when we're working in organizations, we also look structurally at what's in the way of women of color being able to lead in your organization. My work is really holistic, right? So I have been a yogi and a meditator for 20 plus years. And there's a crisis of abundance, right? Like we're doing. And the work that I do with women is to first pause, right? Like you can't craft your best life or what's your goals for 2019 if you haven't had a chance to pause and to listen to yourself, right? And so my work is very holistic. My clients say I'm a balance of woo-woo, like spiritual, and like type A, get shit done, right? And I wear that very proudly. And so I'm really happy to be here with you today. I'm a mother of 2 11-year-old, almost 12-year-old twins. I am a wife/partner for 24 years. Yes, may I receive that. And I'm a daughter and a sister and a new transplant here to Atlanta. So I'm really happy to be here. Thank you.
Thank you for leading us. I didn't know you would walk through these doors. You didn't know you were even all mindful, did you? I'm just glad that we have that recorded so I can replay that. I mean, that was like a recording. Your voice is so good. It's a radio voice. Thank you.
You're welcome. And if anybody wants a meditation, I do have some meditations for my clients. You can give me your card afterwards, and I'll send you the links. So.
Take her up on that. So thank you, Marla. So next we have Ekene Onu. Ekene and I met at an event that we were both speaking at back in 2014, I believe it was. I think so. I wasn't even living in Atlanta. I was emceeing, she was speaking, and it was like instantly we knew we needed to talk further. She had such presence and wisdom and poise and just so much to give that, I just love her. So talk a little bit about the work you do.
Sure. So thank you for having me here, Kailei. And let me tell you why I gravitated Kailei. I loved her outfit. She was too small for me to snatch it, but she looked amazing. So my name is Ekene, and as you can tell, I'm not from Atlanta, right? Although I've lived here for about 17 years. I'm originally from Nigeria, but I was born here but raised in Nigeria, so I have the benefit of being from both worlds. And in fact, when we think about living our best lives, I think that's one of the things for me is living in the duality, always living in the duality. So the work that I do, I run a coaching and consulting company called Refresh with Ekene. And like Marla, I work with individuals and organizations, and like Kailei and Monica, which is why this is so awesome, right? Because we're living out the truth that you don't have to compete, you can collaborate, right? We all work with women leaders in different ways. So I also support women leaders. My prior background, I used to be a pharmacist for almost 20 years. And in that life, I think I saw, and I was talking about it today, I did an Instagram live today, I saw what I would call soulless success. So a lot of one-dimensional success. So, and most of us have been taught to think about success in that linear way, right? So you go to college, you get a job, you get married, and you you have all the dots that you're supposed to connect, and somehow it's supposed to give you a fulfilling life, but it really doesn't. And behind the counter in the white coat, I would fill these prescriptions that would show me what a life that is unfulfilled really looks like insomnia and depression and high blood pressure and anxiety and so on and so forth. And I remember the day that I made the shift, right? And I had my own personal stuff, by the way, so I'm also living this out, soulless success, because I did everything too. I got married, I bought the house, I had a 6-figure income, I did check, and I was hating my life every day, and I would have a giant cookie and a latte every day just to get through, and then again 2 hours later another giant cookie and another latte, and it wasn't working. And so I was having all of these personal issues go on, and then I was also, attracting the clues to my new life, right? And so a woman walked in, and she looked as if she just stepped out of the pages of Essence magazine. She was the definition of the word coiffed. Right, I had to go figure out the coiffed. I had to say it right, because she literally walked in. She's everything. And when she walked in, and of course she was a sister, right? She's just perfect. She said, can you help me find something to help me sleep? And I said, sure. What's going on? Tell me. Why aren't you sleeping? Because I want to know if it's jet lag or is it drug related. And right there, and I was working for Target at the time, in the aisles of Target. Now, Target can make you cry for many reasons, right? Because there's so much great stuff. But she just started to cry. And I was kind of taken aback. I wasn't expecting this. And thank God this was before lashes, so, everything was still okay. So I took her aside, and we started talking, and she started telling me everything she was going through. And I said, oh, are you getting any help? Are you talking to anybody about this? And she said, and I'm also a Christian, so I'm a woman of faith, so I can really relate to what she said, both the positive and the bondage of what she said. She said, I'm so sorry, I know I should be able to do all things through Christ. And I said, but he doesn't require you to carry the cross, because he already did it, right? So you don't have to go through all of this, and you don't have to go through it all alone. And she wasn't telling anyone about it. And so we had this long chat. My prescriptions were piling up, by the way, so I was failing as a pharmacist, but I was having this wonderful human moment. And then after that, she said, I feel so much better. And she came back the next week. I said, do you need another drug? She said, no, I just want to talk. I want to talk for a bit. And so I started having these clues show up saying, okay, maybe you're in the wrong field, right? Plus I wasn't, I was mediocre at that point as a pharmacist, because when you're out of alignment, you can never shine. You will always just be okay. And that's why so many of us will go to our graves, unfortunately, never really living up to our potential because we don't have the courage to step up. And it was hard. And for me, I love how you said, a lot of life events came, to pass. For me, being a Nigerian, I was like, wahala. Wahala entered my life. It was so stressful. I had literally all sorts of things. The bottom fell out of my life. And perhaps that was what was necessary for me to pause. So everything just kind of fell apart. And I had to stop, and I had to ask myself some real questions about what kind of life did I want to lead. And I came to the decision that I had to let some things go. In fact, so one thing I love about African American culture is the flavor, so permit me, right? So I said, somebody's got to give, and it ain't finna be me, right? So I made that decision right then and there, and I decided to leave this career of 17 years without a plan. I don't recommend it. Have a plan. But I needed to do that because I think if I didn't do that, I wouldn't have made it. I would never be here. I'd be a shadow of myself by now. And so I jumped into the water and started to build a boat. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I just knew that I needed to change. And at the time, I was over 300 pounds. I was nowhere near myself. I didn't even know what my style was. I didn't know I had style. What was style? I was so lost. Girl.
Got it now, honey.
Okay.
I see that, bro.
I didn't have any sense of myself. And so many of us have given up who we are. We've seated ourselves. And so I had lost myself completely. And I went back on a journey, which I help women now go through, to return to myself. Because you're not finding yourself out there. It's to return to who you have always been created to be. And so I had to return to myself. And in that returning, people would say to me, you look so refreshed. What happened? And then that's when Refresh came about. I named my company Refresh. And I just was kind of figuring it out as I went along. So we started in 2012, somewhere around 2014. Started moving from a hobby, because it was a hobby, an expensive hobby, wasn't making any money for a while. Right? 2014 started making a little money, became a hustle. Right? And then right around 2016, got some systems in place. It actually became a business. And now we're moving ahead. And finally I'm like, okay, we have goals, we have targets, we're doing well. Right? What next? Right? So, but I'm excited about the possibilities that exist. I'm excited about being a model of what walking by faith and not by fear looks like, I'm excited about that, even as I stand in the duality of being terrified about that. So thank you for having me.
Thank you. So Monica is one of those people, when I met her and really learned about who she is and what she does, you don't meet people like these three, period, often. But when I met her and learned about all of the things that she does, I said, okay, one, I want you to be on the podcast, but I know that we can't just have an interview. People need to experience you. And you'll learn more about what she does, and you'll see why. And in fact, we had a session together, and you'll understand, we'll get into that. But we had a session together, and I just posted it today. I haven't even publicized it, I just posted it right beforehand. And she is a remarkable being. She is a great example of someone who understands why she is here and is using her gifts fully to help other people. And it's incredible to see her in action. It was incredible to experience the work that she does myself, and I'm still processing. So I'm gonna, let everybody into all of that now. Please introduce yourself, Monica.
Hello, everyone. I'm Monica Bay, and I am a spiritual coach. That's spiritual, not religious. And I'm also an energy healer and a mind advancement expert. And so what I do is I utilize a lot of things all together. It's multifaceted. I have a lot of spiritual gifts that I have had since childhood, so I've always naturally been able to heal with my hands. I have a lot of, way too many gifts to name, but I have a lot of gifts to see inside of people, to see the energy inside of people as well as around people, and really be able to uproot those issues that are holding people back. And what I do is I couple that together with life coaching, spiritual coaching, and also the extensive work that I've done with the subconscious mind. I have been able to create a couple of new techniques that I use to really tap into people's subconscious mind to uproot the things that are holding them back, but also tapping into the soul to discover that life purpose. Because I think that that is so important to be able to know, what your purpose is, and to be able to live a purpose-driven life. So the two techniques that I've developed are called I call it the Soul Revelation Method is one, and then the other method is called the Mind Advancement Method. And so what I do is I package all of this together, which is a lot, but I package it all together into a few programs that I have for my clients, and I take them on a transformative journey to their best selves, basically. I'm happy to be here.
And if you want to hear, like, I got vulnerable, I got real, and I actually recorded the session and put it out to the world, so I'm still processing that myself. But if you want to hear her in action, you can go to beyondthebusinessuit.com or wherever you find your podcasts and experience, observe, and listen to that session that she and I had together. She uncovered some things I had no idea. She said it was going to get deep. And I said, okay. But she got deep. She got really deep. So, let's get into it. You did.
I had a session too.
She said, girl, she is the truth. And she didn't lie. So let's talk about what it means to live your best life. Because like I said, there's the song, there's that hashtag, there's this idea of, I want to live my best life. But what does that really mean? How would you define what living your best life means to you? Whoever would like to start.
I think we started touching upon it. It's a very individual process, right? But for me, living my best life is living in deep alignment with my core values, right? And it's not a list of to-dos, but rather a way to be in the world, right? And so for 2019, when I think about living my best life, it's one of the first few years where I've said, I'm not crafting my to-do list anymore, right? Because what happens is often, I can attest that it's happened to me, and I know it's happened to many of my clients. As soon as you fall off and don't check off one thing that you think you were supposed to check off, it's like the house of cards falls, right? And it's overwhelmed, and it's about how you want to be and approach your life. It's critical to living your best life, right? And so I think it has to do with being in deep alignment with your values and your beliefs, right? I had a client once who she really, and actually this was a live broadcast. She had a show called Mocha Marriage, and I was on there talking about self-care as marriage care. And so she was like, okay, I'm really struggling. She used to be a yoga teacher, had twin girls, they were 9 years old, and hadn't stepped on the mat in 9 years, right? So she was like, okay, walk me through, how would you work with a client? And I was like, all right, we're doing this live, you ready to go there? I'm ready to go there. And so in her mind, it was, she wanted me to help her create systems to get her back on the mat, right? So we started talking, it was like, okay, so there's a moment in time where you can choose going to that yoga class or sitting in front of the couch watching TV with some potato chips, right? And so what happens in that moment? And so we started walking through the thought process of what was happening, right? Well, I have have to pick out a class. I have to put on my yoga clothes. I gotta get, childcare for the kids. I gotta get my yoga mat. I have to go to the door. I have to go to the car. I have to, right? But what ended up happening as we continued to peel back the layers, and all this was live, mind you, what happened for her was, once we got to the place of what happens when you get on the mat, what was really up for her was that she could gain 45 pounds since her children were born, and she was afraid that she couldn't do it anymore. That was what was running things. It wasn't her schedule. It wasn't that the kids were, overwhelming, although all that could be true. If we had just focused in on getting her and making a to-do of getting childcare in place, all these things, I guarantee you that she might have gone for maybe a few days, but it wasn't going to be sustainable until we got to the root cause, right? And so I think, and she literally at the moment on live radio said, the first words that came from, okay, tell me, what do you think when you get on the mat? And her words were, I'm way too fat to do this. And her face, like when she said it forgetting she was online. It was this moment of like, oh my God, I just completely outed myself, right? But what happened from that moment, because then we can work with that. Like we can really work with the hurt, right? Because the hurt is where you can let the light in, right? That part of you that's broken, that's where the light comes in. And so we could then work with that. And then after that, it was like, she was texting me every day, girl, got on my mat today, got on my mat today. So I think for me, it's about values, your alignment, and ultimately your beliefs, right? Because your beliefs inform your behaviors, and your behaviors inform your habits, and your habits create the structure of your life. And too many times as go-getters, we focus just on the behavior, and we gotta take it one step back. What's the belief that's informing that behavior?
Okay, that's great. I feel like Marla said it all, but for me, when I think about living your best life, I already started saying a little bit about the duality. And I think that, particularly since we're talking to women of color, primarily, that we really do have to begin to give ourselves permission to be both perfect and imperfect at the same time, to be both masterpieces and works in progress at the same time, to be both the student and the teacher at the same time. I think that as wonderful as Black Girl Magic is, it can also become a chain that holds us, and binds us, because we're trying to live up to this expectation that is unrealistic at times. For most of the most amazing people that I know, they are, some of them right before they step on stage, have just had a breakdown. And this is real, right? And the fact that they had a breakdown doesn't take away from the fact that they're amazing, right? They're just human, and that's the human thing, that we have to at least acknowledge that we're human and give ourselves permission to be fully human and actually fully divine at the same time, right? And then be present to the moment. I think a lot of times we think our best life is somewhere out there, and I've gone back and forth with you. I'm living my best life, it's coming, right? But it's here. It's always here. There's nothing there. There's no there. It's only in the now. And if we can learn to access the beauty in the now, then you're always living your best life. And so for me, the work that I'm doing, when I do work with clients, whether I'm working one-on-one, or whether I'm in an organization and I'm talking to leaders or developing a training or a retreat or a workshop, I'm looking to help women get more engaged with who they really are. One, to get that permission to really be themselves and be authentic to who they are. And sometimes it's hard for us to be authentic, not because we're trying to be disingenuous, but often because for so long people have told us who we are, we don't know who we are. We don't know how to hear our own voices. Many of us go from being daughters of very strong people who tell us what to do. We go into a system that tells us what to do, and then we have children who tell us what to do. Right? And so we never really connect to that, and we lose ourselves. So getting back to who you really are so you can be truthful, like she said, your core values, right? You have to know who you are, and that will allow you to create a life that you can live within, a life that has meaning, a life that makes sense for you, right? Because sometimes we're creating these lives like trying to do everything all at once, and you're exhausted all the time, and you're snapping at everybody, and you're mean, Or one of the things that I'm really focused on in the last 2 years, I've been doing a lot of work in energy, feminine energy and masculine energy. And a lot of the women that come to me are out of balance because the world has taught us to work with masculine energy, which is get shit done type of thing, get it, goals and da-da-da. And there's no room for flow. And there's no room for intuition. And there's no room for feeling and being and all of those lush, even when we're being, the feminine things, it becomes kind of gotta twerk this way, and and that takes away from the sensuality of the feminine. It becomes about the male gaze, and if you don't do it, girl, somebody else will. That's not feminine energy. That has nothing to do with it. So, and we lose all of that, and you get out of balance, and you don't know why you don't feel good, no matter how much money you make, no matter how good you look, you never feel good because you're out of balance. And you don't know why your relationships are challenged and all of these other things are happening. So trying to make sure that women understand, one, have a life of meaning, have a life that makes sense to you, that you can be your true, authentic self, and a life that fits with the way you naturally are, so that you stop being a square peg and trying to, push yourself into the world.
That's so good. So Monica, I'd love to start the next question with you. What are some of the roadblocks that you've seen or heard from many of the clients that you've worked with?
Well, for the most part, I think two things. One, limiting belief systems, because what I've seen is that so many people don't believe in themselves, and it starts with some emotional trauma a lot of times. Things in childhood that they've been told, limitations of what they can't do, because when you're a child, you think you can do everything. And then you're kind of taught that, no, you can't. And so a lot of those limiting belief systems, as we grow up and become adults, they become foundations for all of the lack of belief in ourselves as we're trying to achieve things in the world, and then sometimes we're not sure why we're not achieving the things that we're trying to set out to achieve. But subconsciously, there are things inside that are telling us that we're not worthy, or that success is for other people, not me. Or, it's kind of an us and them kind of thing where you separate yourself instead of recognizing your greatness. And like I said, as a child, every child thinks that they could be Superman, right? So it's something that is natural to us to believe in ourselves, but as we grow up, because of our life experiences, we tend to hold on to those limiting belief systems, and they really prevent us from achieving our greatness and just stepping into our greatness, and without fear. And there will always be fear, but like they say, feel the fear and do it anyway. So, but if you have limiting belief systems, you're not going to step out. You're not going to step past that fear, because you're going to be held by it and caged by it. And so I think that is the main thing. And then, like I said, emotional issues underneath. A lot of people experience emotional trauma as children. And again, so with trauma is not something, when we think of trauma, we think of, oh, these horrible, horrible things happened. But a lot of times, trauma is not something that you think of as horrible. Trauma is very relational to the person experiencing the trauma. So as a child, someone yelling at you can be traumatic. And as an adult, you're like, oh, that was nothing. But there are things that you hold on to in life. And again, they become foundations underneath upon which everything else is built. And you start to be short-tempered, you start to be triggered by different things, and you have no idea why. So that's what I find that the biggest roadblock.
Thank you. Ekene, Marla, any common roadblocks that you've seen?
I think it's just an offshoot of that, right? It's the limiting beliefs are real, and I don't know that we pause enough to actually get in touch with them. And we move straight to trying to make changes in behavior, and that's not sustainable, right? And I really find it in really successful, kind of badass type A women, right? Because we know how to get stuff done. And so we try to fix our lives by doing something different. And I'm not saying that action isn't important, but it tends to not be sustainable over a long period of time if it's not grounded or anchored with some real healing.
That makes sense. Now we're talking about, realizing the vision that we have for ourselves this year and being our best selves. So when you think back to a time when maybe you were either getting to becoming a better version of yourself, or you were in the flow where you felt like, you were really in it. What are some of the tools you used or the things you did in order for you to get in that place?
I guess I'll go with that. So for me, a major transformation journey that I went through was kind of similar to your story and your story of leaving corporate America. So I used to be a vice president for a finance company, and I was in that career for 13 years, and just through several things that happened in my life. But I discovered that I basically woke up one day and was like, okay, I'm unfulfilled and I'm bored. And what now? I was so excited at first about, reaching the next level and success and making the money, and very driven towards that. And, at some point I discovered I was unfulfilled, and then I had to go within, as you were saying, I had to really go within and pause and say, okay, what do I really want out of life, and why am I really here? Because again, I think life purpose is something that is so important, that so many people go their entire lives without knowing their purpose, and it's so important to get to know what that purpose is, because a life without purpose is an unfulfilled life. You cannot have true fulfillment in life without knowing your purpose, or at least moving toward knowing your purpose and living a purpose-driven life. So some of the tools that I used to get out of corporate America was I had started doing a lot of energy work on myself and developing my spiritual gifts more. So really I used all of those tools on myself to allow me to step past the fear and just take that leap of faith and leave my corporate job and to help people. People thought I was crazy, but I felt the fear and I did it anyway. And that's just something I think is so important. Other tools would be, definitely meditation was a huge thing, because again, you can't find your purpose and really know anything about yourself unless you stop and go within. So yeah, those are the major tools.
Great. Any other tools?
That I used, both that I constantly use and also use with clients, there's 4 things: inspiration, mastery, self-care, and community. And so bringing those 4 things, they always play a role, right? So I'll start with self-care, because the conversation about healing, I think, is actually really deep. And even the conversation about trauma, when we say trauma is, we always think about trauma as this big, heavy thing, I'm sure most of you are watching the whole R. Kelly thing and being like horrified, like, oh my God. And trauma can be that, but trauma can also, like, I had a child, and childbirth is trauma. And we don't talk about the fact that giving birth can be like trauma. It's a complete change of your life. And, it changes you. And there's divorce, there's getting married, there's losing a job. There are all these things that are major traumas that you do have to give yourself space to heal from. And we don't actually do the healing work that we need to do. And so that self-care is really very key. In fact, next month, in March, I'm doing a private retreat for some clients. A client who is going through a divorce decided to do private things for people. And so I'm flying down to her city, and she has 10 women who come together around to support her. It's actually the most amazing thing, right? And she's like, can you design a retreat for us? Because I need to come out of this on top. I'm going through it, and she's a client, so we're working through a lot of things. But she's like, I don't want to be in the thick of this for much longer. I want to figure out a process. So yes, we are going through a healing retreat, right? We're doing some womanhood stuff, and some of the stuff that we're doing is self-care around sort of, again, recovering your feminine energy, right? So we do some of the things that we think are frou-frou and frivolous are so powerful, like a salt scrub, and get some beads, and I won't tell you everything, but you do some of that, and then doing it with a sisterhood. There's nothing more powerful, I think, right? One of my favorite images is from the movie Beloved. And that, I don't know how many watched it, maybe me, only me. But, right, you guys watched the movie, right? There's a scene in the movie, and of course for me, for you guys, I don't know how you connected to it, but me being West African, where we really do believe, whether you acknowledge it or not, it's so inside of us, that maybe spirits are sitting right here with us, right? We have one foot in the spirit world and one foot in the physical world. That's the way we've been raised. So watching that movie was very, I felt like I was watching a terror movie. It's very, visceral. And so as she was having this demonic, spiritual thing, and then the women gathered outside. Does anyone remember that scene? And they started to sing. And they stood there, and one of them says, "The child does not kill her mother." And I was like, yes, a child will not kill her mother. What is it? Right, I was in it, right? And it was so powerful for me in life. That's my favorite image, because they gathered, and they didn't even like Sefi. The women didn't even like her, right? But they were like, how can this happen? It's not done in our town. So they took authority, and they gathered as women and said, no, this is not acceptable. We're not going to let this happen. And they sang. And to me, that is like, these are the deep knowings of our ancestors that we've lost. Knowledge that has been lost, right? Because we've accepted the Western way of doing everything, and so all these things are irrelevant. But these are powerful truths that when we can access, when women cook together, when they're sitting around in those kind of fires that we're doing, we've had these conversations, and there's healing that occurs that is intangible, that changes you. So this community is really powerful, and a lot of us aren't careful about community. And in fact, one of the saddest things for me about reality TV, and I watch it, I'm just being honest, I do. But when we put language around toxicity, like, girl, there's shade. It's not shade, it's contempt. And a lot of us have relationships where contempt has been normalized. So now we're calling each other bitch this and bitch that. That's contempt. And we're living in these communities that are damaging. And so when we think about tools, get in an affirming community and be non-negotiable. I'm intolerant of any nonsense. Like, I don't take shade at any. Shade, goodbye, because I only know the sun. I'm not interested in shade. Speak on it. So that community is very important. And then being clear on inspiration. Inspiration means breathing life into you. And some of us, we can't access our genius because we're no longer inspired. Like, you don't take the time to get inspired. And so Dominique is a good friend of mine. We went and had a cup of tea and we walked through the Woodruff and we're just feeling very bourgeoisie and, but even just sitting in there and taking those few moments. I went back, we spent the whole morning, but I did some work in an hour that would have taken me 4 hours to do because I was that inspired. And there's so much genius in inspiration, but because we have been taught to run this rat race, we miss out on that. So those are the 4 tools that I share with people. Inspiration, self-care, community, and the last thing was mastery. Mastery of yourself. Like, who are you? What are you here for? She said it with purpose. What is your genius? What do you do better than anybody else? So many of us are just in this zone of mediocrity, right? You're just okay, you're competent. I'm not interested in what you're competent at. If other people are competing with you, it means you're still in a competent place. But when you enter genius, nobody can compete with you, right? And you command the highest value. So find out what your genius is. What is it that you do that no one can do in the way that no one else can do it, right? So we discover that, and those are the tools.
So good. So about inspiration and doing those things that will bring you joy. I think that's so important. One of the books that's on the list that I mentioned to you is called The Artist's Way. And if there are any creatives in the room, this book is the Bible for creatives. And Julia Cameron, the author, at the end of every chapter, she gives what she calls artist dates for you to spark your creativity. So when you think about it, play. Like when we're children, we're our most creative. We are playing. Like playing is a part of being human. But when we become adults, we think we're too old to play. But it's those things, we are creators. creating is a part of the human experience. It's not the creation, it is a creating. So having those, I love that she gives different opportunities for you to access those parts of yourself that may have been suppressed. So I want to be mindful of the time and do want to give you all an opportunity to ask some questions to our panelists. So do we have any questions in the room? And I'll come down with the microphone because we're recording this, so we need to have you on the mic.
First of all, thank you, ladies, for showing up. I've really enjoyed the session. Thank you, Kailei, for inviting me. I love January. We're always energized. We are putting our best foot forward. But what is some advice you have for after January when you get into a lull, you might get into a rut, to really show up and continue to push and really live your best life after, everyone's doing their New Year's resolutions and things like that? How do you keep pushing?
I can answer. I think even the question pushing, right? It connotes that there's resistance. And so I would encourage you to think about how can you craft your goals so that they're in deep alignment with grounding rituals for you, right? And what I mean by that is what can you do daily that is deeply restorative for you, that will bring about that kind of inspiration that charges you and calls you forth, right? So if it is yoga, if it's meditation, if it's cooking, if it, I tend to talk to my clients about self-care is not another thing to do, but another way to be, right? And we are spirits in physical bodies, and we experience our bodies through our senses, right? So what does your self-care taste like? What does it smell like? What does it sound like, right? And so I think that there's a way of, can you harness your goals in ritual that is mindful, that that is deeply restorative to you? Because once you get to that place of restoration, we don't rest enough, we push. Right? And so I would even encourage you to think through, I got to push through these goals. Like, no, I got to allow these goals. So what are the structures that you need to have in place in your life that allows you and gets you into a state of allowing? Right? I think there's a slight shift there.
I would also say, too, with the point on the pushing, is that sometimes we have to push because our goals are not in alignment with us. And so I would also encourage anyone feeling that way to reassess their goals. Is there a passion behind your goal? Is that aligned with your purpose? And what is the real reason for that goal? Is it a superficial goal? Is it a vanity goal? Or is it coming from deeper within? And because when something's passion-driven and purpose-driven, there's no need to push because it's there. And if you are pushing and it is passion-driven, that means there's things holding you back, and then you have to go within to discover those things and obliterate them.
That's so powerful. You mentioned vanity goals. I was talking to someone recently who was saying, I realized I want to be on the cover of a certain magazine. And then I realized, okay, if I want to do that, then what are the goals that I need to establish in order for me to get there? And I was thinking, that's the goal, to be on the magazine. How well will she achieve that goal if that's the goal? Why are you being on the magazine? When you talk about vanity goals, it's like, okay, what's the intention behind what you're thinking about and what you're trying to do? And if it's rooted in the right intention, then I think there's more of an opportunity to succeed. Oh, I hear some good coming here.
So, as much as I do agree with Marla and Monica and Flo and all of that, I will admit, I get tired too. And there are times, and I will pray, and I do feel aligned. But even Paul said, the things I don't want to do, I find myself doing. And the things that I want to do, I don't find myself doing. So sometimes, no disrespect,
No, absolutely.
you will need to push. I believe that. I think that is sometimes the reality, which is why I think, for me, community is important. So when you see fishes in the ocean, they move in a school. And the momentum, the reason why they do that, and same with birds, it's a physics thing. The momentum actually makes it easier so that they're not struggling alone. And I think too many of us are trying to do so much alone. And for me, that's like last year, a year and a half ago, I opened up a community. I had a refresh leadership circle, and it was literally designed for women who wanted to go somewhere. And all I wanted to do was, I know not everyone's going to hire a coach, right? Because that's not realistic. Not everyone's going to have the time or the budget. But I wanted a coaching community that we can all go together. And there's that proverb, an African proverb says, you want to go fast, you go alone. If you want to go far, you go together. And so the women that joined the community, this is the interesting thing. Most of them, we had a 90% return. They're still in the membership, right? We lost some people, they came back, but the number one thing they all said was, oh my gosh, I've been able to do so much more because I come here and some days I just don't feel like it, and then I'm here and you guys are like, yeah, you're so awesome, or what, you know what I mean, just the affirmation. And I don't think we understand the damage that we daily go through microaggressions. Yes. And do you know the power of microaffirmations? So when you're in a community, when there's all this affirmation going on, even if they're not talking directly to you, and I'm like, Marla, you rock, you get the benefit of that, being in an affirming community. And I think we just need to be more intentional. So when you get to those points where you need to push, then you log in, hey girl, right? And even if you're not in a group like mine, you actually have a conversation with somebody, and you become more intentional about those relationships. That can help.
Thank you for that, Ekene, because I also feel like rigor is important. And so I want to clarify, this isn't about not being rigorous, but there are steps before you get to that place to make sure that the goal is in deep alignment with you, right? And it is deeply anchored in something that's sustainable and that is soul feeding for you. And then rigor comes in, right? Because you do have to do that, right? And so it's very much a both and situation. Have y'all, every successful woman has like a group chat who has her back.
Right, exactly. It keeps mine going. It keeps me going. Thank you. I'm sure I'm reiterating what everyone else is reiterating, that this is probably one of the best Thursdays at the beginning of the year that we could spend. So thank you all again. An observation and then a question. I think that some of what you shared, particularly the trauma, because it was a way that you put it. I think we do typically see trauma as a slap or a kick or something that's very physical, and it can be certain instances that I think have really had an impact on our lives that we bring up. I'm the youngest of 3 daughters, so I had it throughout my life. But my question too is, as these women who are doing and changing and everything else, we are connected in so many other ways to our parents and to our kids. And my mind immediately went to my daughter. As I'm a woman who's trying to live my best life, I am constantly in relation with my daughter as well. And our children, how can we rather, simultaneously bring that healing, come into self-fulfillment, at the same time modeling for our children in a way that's very intentional and impactful?
I'll take that. So one thing that I think is very important, I don't have children, but if I did, one thing that I think is very important is for parents to show their children how to go within. Because again, I bring everything back to going within, because that's really where you find out who you are, and the truth of everything is going within, because all the answers are already inside of you. And so no matter what your spirituality is, the answers are inside of you, and then you can always go up here to get more. So I just think it's important for parents to teach their children that, and by example as well. So as you're going through your issues and you're going through your transformation, bring your children in on that and show them, you know, what it looks like to evolve. Because I think that's so important.
Yeah. So I had a woman who came to me and said, oh my God, I really want to teach my son to meditate. Like, he's all over the place. I was like, well, do you meditate? And she said, no. I was like, okay, we'll start there, right? And so it's really, I feel like, you modeling and being that presence, because I know, you know, I had a conversation with a young mother the other day, and she found out I had twins, and mine are almost 12, and hers is a little one. And she was just like, how was motherhood for you? And I was like, it sucked. The first 2 years broke me. And when I tell you that woman was like, oh my God, thank you for saying that, right? Because there's an expectation that parenting is natural and that it comes easy to us. And I can tell you, for me, it was hard. And so the mom that came up was different than the mom that I thought I wanted to be, right? So I had this idea, I'm super crunchy granola, right? So like, I was gonna be all liberal, I was gonna be super like, all this nonviolent communication. Thank you, right? It was like, oh, hell no, right? I mean, so, and that's real. Right? So I had this vision of myself, but what came out was the straight up trauma of how I was raised. And I had great parents, but yet I come from a household that yells to this day. Right? Like, a yelling household. That's what came up. Right? So I had to do my own work. But in that, the sisterhood was important, right? But the healing of my own traumas were important, and being really mindful. And I think that practices that deeply ground you as a family, so that the children are included in that. So from the age of 2 to about 9 years old, my family and I have gone to a Buddhist meditation center for 5 days every New Year's. And they do walking meditation, sitting meditation. There was a program with the kids, and when they were 2 years old, someone asked me, it was our first time there, and my husband was in South Africa, and it was just me and the twins, right? And we were about to go on this walking meditation. There was a hike up a mountain, and there were, I see people rolling around, like, oh Lord. And so I did have friends there, and so I said, oh my God, like what should I do? And one of my friends, Brett, says, just watch what happens. And so I told the kids, we're going to go on a walk, and we're just going to try to be a little quiet, right? And they were 2.5. And we walk, and all of a sudden they're kind of loud and rambunctious, and then they realize everybody around them is silent. Like, okay. So they pick up rocks, and they did that silent meditation. They would come up and whisper to me. And the whole point was they were in a community where they felt the energy of, supposed to be silent. We're all doing this. And when I tell you that those 5 days have been so incredibly grounding for us at the beginning of the year, right? That meals were silent. I mean, we're talking little kids, and you know little kids, they like to talk. But we were all in practice as a family, right? And I think that's the biggest thing, just being in practice as a family.
Already said. I would also say, I think for me, telling the truth, the whole truth, the ugly truth. I think that many of us, I grew up with closed doors. Fights happen behind closed doors. If there are financial challenges, it's behind closed doors. And so you end up growing into adulthood without tools, because you don't know what it looks like. You never saw it. And I understand why that happens as a mother too, because I have two. I have a 13-year-old, I have a 22-year-old. And so the thing about truth-telling, though, is you have to find a way to tell the truth without overwhelming the children, because they're not really equipped to deal with adult anxieties. So how do you do that? So this is kind of what I'm dealing with in the now, really wanting to make sure that my children are prepared for real life, and that they have permission to live in the duality. And I show them my own challenges. My 13-year-old, though, is a caretaker. So when I show her the challenges, her natural inclination is to take care of me, which is not her job, right? So I have to now be mindful about how I'm doing that. And so I'm learning too, and that's the other piece, allowing them to be our teachers, right? And then also releasing this idea that is very egoistic, that they are ours. They're not ours. We are their guardians. We did not create them, even though it came from our seed and all of that other stuff. But you didn't create yourself, so how could you create them? They came through you, right? And so having that understanding that they are unique beings created for a unique purpose, and I'm here to shepherd them through that process and whatever that looks like for them. So Sina, who's my daughter, has been teaching me consistently, but then also I give her permission. I'm sure she's going to do this with her children, where all these weird, like, Nigerian idiosyncrasies show up. Like, we went to Gay, Georgia, to stay in a cabin. I don't know why. We thought we could do something crazy like that in the woods. Like, we thought we were like Oibos or something. We went there, and we went and we stayed in the woods, and it was the most frightening thing, right? Because there were like no other houses, and just woods, and then we heard guns in the distance. We didn't see any more black people as we were driving. We were freaking out, but we had already paid for the cabin. What did we do? And so my father and my husband were sitting in the cabin, and me and the children, I was like, listen, let me tell you what we're going to do. We're going to walk this perimeter, and we're going to pray Nigerian prayers, right? And this is how we're going to make it through. And so they're reluctantly walking along, but I noticed that they're like, just in case, amen, 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 right? Just in case, right? So, and I share all of that with them. That, I'm someone that I can meditate, I can pray, I can do these are all the tools I have, right? And this is what I have to offer you. Pick and choose, right? And then if they don't work, develop your own. And then I let them know every single day, right? So I gave birth to Sina is my birth child. Audrey is my bonus child because I married her. And I didn't raise her till she was 15, and I fasted and prayed before she came into my life because I really wanted to be a good stepmom. And I'm grateful to say that even without her dad, we have an amazing relationship, and that is truly God. But I tell the both of them that there's not a thing they could do, not a thing they could do, not a mistake they could make, not a choice they could make. There is nothing they could do that will stop me from being their mother, and that will stop their access to me. I will never turn my back on them. And I think for children, that is the most critical thing they need, to know that they are unconditionally loved. Now, I will shout, I will smack, I will do whatever needs to be done, but they will always be loved.
And in closing, I would love for you to share just some parting words for all of us. As Myra asked earlier, we know the statistics about, you go into the gym on January 3rd and it's packed, and you go in there on March 15th and it's not. So what are some parting words that you can instill in all of us as we are trying to look forward to what we want to be this time next year? How can we get there? What are some things that some reminders for us?
Yeah, so I'm Mexican, and so in Latino culture, there's something called a cuarentena, right? So 40 days is very auspicious in many cultures, right? 40 days of Jesus on the mountain, or Moses on the mountain, 40 days of Noah's Ark. There's 40 days in many cultures. In Latino culture, when a woman gives birth, traditionally she had a cuarentena. So her and her newborn child would not leave the house, and they would be home, and they'd be taken care of, right? They would be given food, massages, just fully loved up and nurtured, so that she could then...
People are like, that didn't happen.
So that she would be loved up and nurtured, so that she could nurture a new life, right? And so your intentions and your goals are new life, right? And so you have to nurture them, you have to water them. They're like these seedlings, right? And if anybody has ever grown something from a seed, you know that a seedling cannot withstand the elements until it's strong enough to do so, right? A farmer knows that when it grows from a seed, they keep them in the greenhouse, they put them out a few hours, bring them back in. The next day, they go out for a few more hours to withstand the sun and the wind, and they come back in, right? And they continue to do this process. It's called a hardening off process. And they do this until the seed is strong enough, that sprout is strong enough that it can withstand the rain, the sun, and the elements, right? They'll even put a fan at the end of the greenhouse, and that fan gives enough kind of energy, and it's shooting the wind, right? It gives enough of resistance to the plant that the plant has to grow stronger, right? So there's a method to that madness. So think of your intentions as those seedlings, as that new life. Nurture them, give them water, give them sun, give them air, but don't expose them to the elements too soon, right? They'll be strong enough to grow. Give yourself those 40 days.
Thank you. Love that. Thank you, Marla. So my parting words, I actually to do with Marla. There's something Marla did, and she said, she came to a session that I did. And when she signed up for the session, she said, and you can hear, like, Marla has it all going on. She knows, seedlings and all of the intentions. Right? So she has a lot of knowledge. And she modeled some, and we've not known each other for terribly long, right? But we've been doing some work together, and we can feel each other's energy. And she said, I'm signing up for your thing, right? Your event. And not just like, can I come, but she paid. Right? So, yeah. So, and she said to me, I really just want to be held. I feel like you can hold me through my visioning process. So it was a visioning session. So I want to be held. And I thought, I already knew I liked her, but that was like deep right there. Like she gets it, right? Because it's so important for us to understand that no matter how phenomenal you are, whether you are the CEO, whatever it is, you need to be held, and particularly women actually, that feeling. So it's okay to ask to be held in your home, somewhere, because can you hold me, baby? Like sometimes that's just what you need, right? Or you need to be held by your friend, or you need to be held by a contemporary, like, hold me in my process. And she did some amazing work through that process. And then, you can even, for me, I remember a day, and this is my last story, right? Because I'm a storyteller, I'm a griot, that's part of my archetype, my leadership archetype. But there was a time when I needed to be held, and I didn't actually have anyone to hold me. And I remember feeling like no one was in the house, I felt alone, and I got home in the afternoon, and I lay on my bed and I cried. And I cried and I prayed, and I said, Lord, I just want to be held. Right? I feel like I'm holding everyone, I feel exhausted. And I cried for a little bit, and when I finished crying, like most of us do, I dried my eyes, put my wig on straight, got on with life, right? And then I said, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to be gentle with myself. I'm going to go swimming. Because swimming is a restorative activity for me. So I said, I'm going to go swimming. So this is going to sound a little woo for those of you that are unfamiliar. Get prepared. Get ready. It's okay. I shall not speak in tongues, but I'm going to tell you a story. Right? And I got into the pool. I had just said this prayer. And literally, this didn't happen to me. I wouldn't have believed it if someone told me. So I got into the pool and I started to swim my laps that I would do. I swam up and down. And there was an old woman in the pool. This is like in the afternoon, right? And there are a lot of old people in the pool in the afternoon, nothing unusual. But there's this old African-American woman on the side. And she was watching me as I was swimming. And so when I finally stopped, she came over and she said, I wish I could swim laps. She just started making conversation. And then she asked me a strange question. She said, do you have pain in any part of your body? And I said, yes. And she said, where? I said, in my knee. And she said, can I touch it? I said, hey, yes, okay. Which was weird, like for me, like a stranger touching me, like, and I'm in my swimsuits, and I said, well, she's an older woman, what can she do, right? Okay, right? So she started to massage my knee, and it started to feel so good. And she's like, oh, I have healing hands, and I'm thinking in my mind, how do I tell her my neck, my back? Like, how do you complete this situation, right? And she's standing there massaging, and she's talking to me, and then she says, you know what? Then she comes under the thing into my lane. She says, I'd like to do something for you. And I'm like, okay, she's massaged the knee. I mean, at this point, I'm yours, right? What do you want? And she said, she put her hands out, she's petite. And I'm not a small woman, right? She's a petite woman. She puts her hands out like this in front of her. And she says, I'd like you to get into my arms. Hey. And I'm thinking of my mother in Nigeria thinking, ha! You want to enter a stranger's hands. Where is she going to take you? So I'm having all these issues. But I had, but this is the thing. I'm going to tell you why I'm getting to the story. I had to release myself into the possibility. I had prayed for someone to hold me. I didn't remember the prayer in that moment, right? But I had prayed. And here's this woman says, get into my arms. And so I said, and she said, don't worry, the water will hold you. Put your arm around my neck and get into my arms. So here I am in LA Fitness. And I get into her arms. And then she starts to sway me back and forth. This was before our retreat in Arizona, so yeah. She starts to sway me back and forth. And she starts saying, let me carry you. You've been carrying so many people, let me carry you. I'm telling you! I started crying. I've never had an experience like this before. I was weeping, and she's just carrying me like this. And people are swimming, going to the hot tub, and we're just having this spiritual experience in LA, right? And then finally, when she's done, she says, okay, now it's done. You can get down. And I get down, and I'm like, okay, what else? Is manna falling from heaven? Like, what else is happening? Right? And she says, no, this is it. It's done. Wherever he sends me, I go. It was over for me. If I wasn't a believer then, forever. You can never change me at this point, right? Because I had prayed. And so this is the parting thing. There are so many times that we pray, but we do not believe that the answer will come. And so when the answer comes, you ignore it. Or you look at it with suspicion. You have not released yourself to receive. And so if you are going to have the life that you desire, you must release yourself to receive and trust that all has already been given to you.
Yay! That's a word. Thank you. Whew, Monica.
Oh, that was wonderful. So, my parting words are, because I like to, again, focus a lot on purpose, and also because the type of clients that I work with, a lot of people are highly successful, yet every other area of their life suffers. And so my parting words are to, if you're really serious about being your best in 2019, and you're really serious about doing the work that's necessary to become the best version of yourselves, it's important, it's paramount, in fact, to examine every area of your life and see what areas of your life are suffering because of your success or your strive for success. Because we've all been there, where we have given up a lot of things in order to reach that success, and some of those things shouldn't have been given up. Some of those things suffer, and we sacrifice so much in pursuit of our goals and our dreams. And so I would just implore everyone to, look at every area of their lives. In fact, I have a PDF, if everyone would take out their phones. And if you text the word happiness to 474747, you will receive my free PDF, and what it is called the Wheel of Life. And what you will do is you will chart each area. It has every area of your life in categories like romance, career, health, things like that, and then you will rate them. And you will be surprised what you rate very low. And I would implore you to, whatever you rate low, focus on that this year. The lowest rate, focus on that. One or two things, just focus on that and work on improving that. Because that is the only way that you can start to become the best version of yourself, is if you bring everything up, level up.
Thank you. I'm going to come back up. Oh, hello, Sveta. Wanted to be in on the well. Thank you, ladies, for being here. This is our fifth panelist over here, fourth panelist. Thank you for pouring into us. Thank you for being so honest and for sharing your gifts with us. I also have something to ask you. First of all, thank you all for being here, but also I challenge you to share something you learned with someone else who is not here. Don't let it stay with you. Don't let all this wisdom stay with you. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. And if you need to remind yourself, so come April 1st, when your goals or your resolutions or whatever goals you had are waning, then listen to this again. Listen to this again. Listen to this again. Listen to these stories again and these tools again so that you're reminded. So, one thing that I'm not positive if I mentioned, or just a reminder, that all these women are going to be at the Beyond the Business Suit retreat, so you can hear more from them and experience more of them at the retreat. So feel free to go to beyondthebusinesssuit.com/retreat for more information there. And have a wonderful rest of your Thursday. These ladies will be sticking around for a few minutes, so if you want to talk to them, learn more about them, exchange information, please do that. And otherwise, thank you all for being here.